Well, hello everyone and welcome. I can see there's people joining us from all over the country and all over the world. So I think most people who are joining have come into the session now. So we can get started. So welcome to today's session. It's the second Maths is More event. I'm Camilla Gilmore and I'm Director of the Centre for Early Mathematics Learning at Loughborough University. And so I'm going to be chairing today's event. And this event has been brought together by a group of individuals and organisations who are really keen to promote a broad and rich view of mathematics and the different ways in which it can be taught. And I hope many of you were able to join us for the first event that we had last month. And during that event, we heard from a range of speakers who gave a really positive and rich view of what mathematics is and what it can be. And if you weren't able to join that event, then the talks for it, the presentations from it, have been recorded and are available on YouTube. And I think Ashley has just added the link to that in the chat. So do use that and you can catch up with those talks from the earlier session if you weren't able to join us then. So last time we were thinking about what mathematics is and what it can be. And today we're going to move on to think about how this view of mathematics can be developed in the classroom, and in particular, how it can be done in research-informed ways. And so our speakers are going to give you some suggestions and examples that you can use in your teaching to really develop this broad and positive view of mathematics. So before we just go on and start with those speakers, a few organisational matters. So all of your microphones are muted, but you can get involved in the discussions using the chat. So please use that to pose any questions or to engage in some discussion and add comments. We'll be collecting some questions for the panel discussion. And so if you want to pose a question to one of the speakers, then please start your comment or your question with a capital Q. And then Ashley, who is monitoring the chat, will be able to pick those questions out and present them during the panel discussion. I would like to sort of really emphasize that this is an open forum, and so please do make sure that all of your comments on the chat are polite and appropriate, considerate, because we really want to promote a positive discussion here today. We are going to be recording the session, but we will only be sharing the presentations widely. So all of the discussion and your questions and so on will just be seen by those who are in the session here today. If you'd like to use social media to carry on the discussions from this event or to promote what we're talking about here, then the hashtag to use is Maths is More. So I think that's all of the housekeeping dealt with, and so we can get on and move on to today's event. And I'm really pleased to introduce 3 different speakers for today's session. And all of them are really experienced practitioners who have in-depth knowledge of how to support mathematics learning in the early years and in primary school. So our first speaker today is Clare Christie. Clare is a maths subject leader at a primary school in Bristol. And she's also been heavily involved in the Boolean Maths Hub since its creation. And she's also written a range of materials and guidance documents for primary school maths teachers. So thank you. Over to you, Clare.
Great, thanks, Camilla. So I will share screen and go. Yeah, is that all right? Can you see everything? Great.
That's great. Thanks, Clare.
Yeah. As Camilla said, my name's Clare Christie and I work at a lovely school called Ashlydown Primary School, and hopefully you can see from the first slide where the school is. And I've been asked to talk about measurement today and some of the measurement work we've been doing in school, but I think one thing I really want to say at the beginning is we didn't set out to have interesting measurement practice. We set out to teach children to understand the number system really, really effectively and all the different aspects of it. And time and again in different year groups, the more we analysed what we wanted children to understand about the different attributes of the number system, the more we found ourselves getting into practical measurement contexts again and again. So I really want you to have in your head that all of this work comes from a number and place value angle, and this is where we've ended up. Where have the thoughts come from? increasing awareness of number line as a model of the number system. I think reflecting back on my teaching, I did a lot of place value teaching, and I started reading more and more about understanding the number line as a model of the number system. So there's quite a lot of research evidence, for example, that children that can more accurately estimate the position of numbers in the number system, that's correlated with higher mathematical outcomes, for example. There's reference to the importance of the number line as a model of the number system in the EYFS report. And this brilliant Babcock report I would highly recommend, and there's a great YouTube video of Ruth talking through it, so I would really direct you there. So lots of kind of thinking about that. I also, around the same time, was shown a chapter of a Japanese textbook, and it was basically a decimals chapter, and I'll show it you in a sec, but it kind of blew my mind because it was not what I thought a decimals chapter in a textbook would look like. And I heard Anne Watson speak, and she said something like she does that always take me about 3 years to understand, but something like, oh, well, decimals are, you know, they have no context other than measurement. So, you know, the only point of decimals is measurement. So I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then I guess the more I started thinking about measurement, the more I reflected on my own experiences, you know, some really horrendous experiences I'm sure you've all had of practical measures lessons where you're pulling out random sets of scales out the cupboard. They don't work. Those scale, they can't read that scale. It's got a different scale from those scales. That just, in reflection, not good. And you know, children's reading scales, I've always noticed they struggle. You know, is that 1001? Is it 1000.2? So, you know, really, the more I thought, that's just more about the number system. So that's where kind of disparate thoughts were coming together for me. This is the Japanese chapter here. So I've hidden all the titles, but, you know, to me, that is a chapter on measures, isn't it? And then look, if I just show all the titles there, this is Introduction to Decimal Numbers, Japanese style. So that really blew my mind and opened my mind to this absolute integration of measures and place value, and sorry, number and place value. And then, so there's also kind of this interesting historical context on measurement, actually. Like, we have countable stuff in the world, the number of apples you have, the number of horses you have. And then we also need to quantify like non-countable stuff, like how much fabric you have, how much land you have, how tall your horse is. And actually over time, I mean, really the historical context of measurements is a historical context of trade and industry, where different industries had you know, completely different measurement systems, and different geographical regions had completely different measurement systems. But over time, for trade and industry to flourish, we had to establish some like standard units of measurement. And in kind of intrinsic, kind of, you know, essential to that system is that this unit is the same size as this unit, which is the same size as this unit. And one of the things I find really fascinating is that's not how we as humans come into the world. We do think we have some kind of sense of a number system that we're kind of, you know, born primed and ready to go with, but it's a much more kind of logarithmic sense of a number system and unequal spacing. So we have to really teach children this idea of equal spacing in the number system, because that's not a starting point. And that is my children back home from school annoyingly ringing the doorbell. Hopefully they'll let themselves in. So all of those things I find quite interesting. We have to teach children about that equal spacing. So I'm just going to dive into some examples from through the school now. So the first one's year 2, numbers to 100 in the linear number system. I'm referencing Ready to Progress all the way through to show that, you know, this is not radical. This is teaching the national curriculum and guidance related to the national curriculum. And, you know, actually holding a number line, these are absolutely brilliant from a large furniture superstore. And you know, we think really carefully, what do we want them to understand? So you can see I've kind of supplemented it with red lines or multiples of 10 and midpoints. So really thinking about, I'm not just grabbing some equipment, what do I want them to understand? And at this stage in year 2, we want them to understand multiples of 10 and midpoints of them. You know, put your finger on the midpoint of 50 and 60, put your finger on 1 less than 7 tens. And once we've got a good idea of that, then we can start to estimate. So let's look at that second picture there. That's a completely different skill set. Okay, we're not reading off numbers now. We're thinking this is 0, this is 100, and roughly what is this? Maybe it's about 70. And they're absolutely brilliant, these lovely meter sticks, which I adore. And then we can flip them round and see, okay, fine. So it's 1 less than the midpoint of 70 and 80. And this is all very intentionally planned, but is practical in the playground. and measuring, but measuring to allow children to understand the number system with a progression that we've thought through really carefully. So then we started thinking, okay, year 2, that's working nicely. Let's think about year 1. And year 1, the guidance and ready to progress suggests thinking about numbers to 20 in the linear number system. Now, out we got the rulers, and that actually slightly blew my mind once I looked at the range of rulers we had in our year 1 classroom. Like, look, imagine, like, these children have just got off a number track. I mean, one of them is a number track. We're starting to introduce the number line and starting the idea of measuring in standard units. And I mean, look at the top one. Can you see the numbers aren't even under the lines, and there's midpoints that don't mean anything to a 5-year-old. So whereas we felt we had a really nice progression of equipment in year 2, in year 1, we have just actually decided to make our own little rulers, which we haven't even planned the unit. We've started talking about it, and I'm so excited about it. There's nothing I love more than teaching a unit that we've planned really well. So we actually decided to make our own. We've got these paint stirrers here. You buy them. I've got a little reference on the next slide. And I'm just going to show you the progression we've come up with that we're going to kind of work through our year 1s. So next one. You see those midpoints marked. We thought so carefully about how we've marked them up. And then to that. So we're planning that. We played around with a couple of children with them, and we're planning the unit and then teaching it starting the week before Easter, which I'm incredibly excited about. So, and you know, I really think that will be the best, for sure, that will be the best teaching our year 1s have ever had on the number system. And it's all going to be practical. They've got these lovely little handles on them. We were going to cut them off at 20 centimeters. And then when we started playing with the children, they love the little handles, and they're going around positioning them on things. And I know that will be more practical than we've ever taught it, and will be better because it has got such a clear focus on what we want them to understand. Right, year 4s. If you're in year 4, the most effective 20-minute teaching episode you will do is the following. Get your trundle wheels out and plan a circular kilometre route around your school and walk 1,000 metres. Call it 1,000 metres, not a kilometre. You know, I've thought, how often do our year 1s, our reception children, count to 10, see models of 10? They just so many times. How many times have our year 4 children counted to 1,000? Probably 99% of children in this country have never counted to 1,000. And this is a way to meaningfully get some sense of thousandness. Counting their heads with the trundle wheels, every 100 meters stop, you all say 100, right? We've done 100. How many more hundreds till we've walked 1,000 meters? And on we go. It's count in their heads till 200, stop. And then there's really nice stuff you can do about looking at that on a circular route, but underneath we've got a linear route as well. So looking at how, you know, what is 300 meters from the school? There's Sammy's house, but there's also the zebra crossing. And if you've ever taught year 5 and 6, you will have heard the phrase, how many meters in a kilometer again? Many more times than you ever want to hear. And I can safely say, once the children have walked a kilometer, they will never, ever ask you again how many meters there are in a kilometer. Again, all this is from the NCTM PD materials. It's not radical, it's there, it's ours for the taking, all of these practical ways into the number system. And then the final thing I wanted to show you is year 5s, introducing decimals. Our year 5 studied decimals for all of the autumn term. And a lot of it's done practically. 2 weeks on tenths, you know, tenths of a centimetre, hand span in tenths of a centimetre, balance scales, tenth of a kilogram. And then these, we've kind of always made up little paper tenth of a metre sticks. But this year we got these jumbo lolly sticks cut with secateurs, and they are just absolutely brilliant. So lesson 1, off they go with their tenth of a metre sticks. And, you know, I've just finished by putting up that slide, which is lesson 1, year 5, September, first week of September, and they're out in the playground with their tenth of a metre measuring sticks and really getting a sense of tenseness. And I think the final thing I kind of want to say is they will read this as, we don't read it as 0.1. Again, 0 workload for a good understanding of the number system. The bib is around 4/10 of a metre long, and the hoop is around 5/10 of a metre. So we teach the children to read it as the kind of number structure rather than the digits on the page. So yeah, that's my final suggestion, is that you get some 1/10 of a meter sticks to supplement the meter sticks you probably already have in school, and just get out measuring so your year 5s and 6s really understand tenthness. And yeah, that's me done.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Claire. Really interesting. It was great to see not just the ideas you're using, but also the progression of them and how you've worked to plan this out across the different year groups. So thank you for that. So just a reminder, if you've got any questions for Claire, or if you want to add some comments about how you think you could use these ideas or adapt them, or even suggestions of the kinds of activities that you might be doing to target these same topics, then please add those into the chat and we can pick out some questions for the panel discussion later. So we'll move next on to our second speaker, and our next speaker will be Alison Borthwick. So Alison is a mathematical consultant, and her career has spanned all different phases of education. So she's worked with a really wide range of organisations to support teachers, and she's also written extensively about research-informed ways to support mathematics learning. So thank you, Alison. Alison, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, let me start again. So thank you very much for that introduction. Thanks, Camilla. And also thank you to the Maths is More team for inviting me, persuading me to talk to you today. So as Camilla said, I wear lots of different hats, but one of my favourite hats is when I go into schools and I support teachers and schools and children, really helping them to think about how we're going to improve outcomes for all children. So I was reflecting on the Maths is More presentation that we had last month with our 4 amazing speakers. And I was really thinking about, you know, we hear lots of research, don't we? And we kind of hear, well, that's great, but how do we actually do it in practice? Can we do it in practice? And I think that's one of the things that I really want to talk to you about today. So I've done lots and lots of mini action research projects where I've read something or I've heard something, always inspired by amazing colleagues around me. And I thought, but does it really work? Is that what happens? So I could have picked anything, but actually what I'm going to talk to you today is about spatial reasoning. Now, here's the thing, I thought I knew about spatial reasoning until I started reading about it and doing it. So I think, you know, it's fair to say that I really started to reflect on what spatial reasoning was when I was doing the lovely pattern project with my amazing colleagues, Sue and Helen. And then that bounced me into another project with these amazing people. You can spend the rest of the time trying to figure out who they are. I've only got 9.5 minutes left, but totally amazing colleagues who really inspired me, and actually as a result produced the spatial reasoning toolkit. If you haven't seen it, head straight to Early Childhood Maths Group website. I've got a reference for you at the end. So that's kind of where I kind of figured out that the spatial reasoning that I knew wasn't kind of what was happening in the research. And I have to hold my hands up and say, I'm always guilty of saying, well, the research says, so shall we have a go? But it's kind of that, well, hang on a minute, does it really, is that what it says? Does it really, is that what it looks like in practice? So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So I've done lots of spatial reasoning projects with schools. I've picked one that I did last year, and I will give you an overview of the project and kind of what we did, a little taster, hopefully inspire and empower you all to go off and do little action research projects. And I'll also finish with the impact. But what did the research say? Now, this is a tiny, tiny snippet. So maybe you'll see kind of the bits that I was reading that made me interested. So first of all, we keep hearing this thing that actually spatial skills predict maths attainment. Really? Is that possible? Because if it is, why aren't we doing it? So that made me stop and think. I thought, oh, okay, you've got my interest. The second one was that actually, you know, looking at spatial awareness, spatial reasoning is very underutilized. And I guess that made me think, oh, well, hang on a minute, where is it in the curriculum? Where is it in the pedagogy? Well, it is there. Is it shape and space? Oh, it's so much more than that. But I kind of think that's where I was starting. And then this idea that actually, I read this and I thought, oh my goodness. So, you know, this was Hawes and Ansari saying, well, you know, to be honest, you know, it's so well established that they make sense, that why aren't you doing it? And I thought, I don't know, but maybe I need to go and test it. I'm not sure. And then the thing that really made me think, oh, okay, is it can be taught? Because, you know, I was a little bit doubtful. I was like, really, really, really? And I think what I want to say to you is that what research makes me do is it really makes me stop. It makes me think, it makes me wonder, it often ambushes me. And then it makes me think, really, really, is that true? So what I'm going to do is a whistle-stop tour through the project for you. So there were 10 schools, 16 teaching staff, and we went from reception to year 6. You know, if in doubt, do it all. There were 6 half-day sessions of around about 3 hours over 8 months. So it was quite a longitudinal project, and that gave us chance to do gap tasks. It was planned for face-to-face, and then it all went online. You'll be in that situation, I'm sure. What did we want to look at? Well, we wanted to see whether we could improve our subject knowledge. We wanted to think about pedagogy and in that, you know, with the curriculum as well, and also assessment, and just, were we doing the best job we possibly could? And of course, going back to always my ultimate goal, well, what about the children? Is it really going to help the children? Because it's all very well and good having a nice time, but does it make a difference? That's what I really wanted to find out. So we did some pre and post assessment. So before we started, we all had a go at some tasks, and then we repeated the tasks again. I didn't make any of them up. I drew all of them from research, and I have got a slide at the end that contains a snapshot of the research. But these are the types of things. So we showed children a square. We kind of showed them it, and then we covered it, and we said, "Can you draw it again?" Amazing who can and can't. We showed them those 2 diagrams and said, which diagram has the blue space, which is taking up more space. We did number line stuff, because when I was starting to read about it, you kind of realize that spatial reasoning isn't shape and space, it's all of the curriculum. And also things like we got pattern in there, and we also did composition and decomposition. And I said to the teachers, do whatever you like. If you've got chance to do a task, do one, do as many as you like, do as little as you like. There was no expectation. Do it with 1 child, do it with 100, whatever you want. So it's very fluid and very open-ended. We did loads. Remember, there were 6 sessions. So we did things on visualization and tangrams and pentominoes. We did the copy me and the barrier games. We looked at maps and routes. There's a lovely one from one of the children that drew. We did composition and decomposition of shapes, but then we bounced it into number. We looked at data. We looked at number lines. So hopefully you're getting a sense that this isn't just about shape and space. We did loads. We also talked about pedagogy, and every time we met, and this I think is a real powerful element, is that we said, what did you do? And how did it go? And then quite often we go like this. And then that was my job to go, so anyway, back to slide number 1, we that kind of thing. But isn't that lovely when that happens? So let me just give you 2 little slides just to kind of whet your appetite. Oh, and we did presentations at the end. I'll come back to that. So pentominoes. We loved pentominoes. There's a couple on the screen. And we talked about, well, how many are there and what can you make? And I think the thing that we did in the sessions was that we did the maths. You know, we actually kind of had a go at doing the maths, and then the teachers could say, actually, yeah, I quite like this one, or no, this one isn't for me. And remember, we did everything, every task from reception to year 6. And then we went and we did, well, how did that go for reception? How did that go for year 4? How did that go for year 5 children, and so on? So that was really powerful to see one task across the primary. And here are some of the things. Some of the children videoed themselves completing the task. I mean, at this point, I could have retired and just gone, my life is complete, because that was lovely that they were in lockdown and then they were videoing themselves going, look. And this is one of the year 5 girls. She was talking on the camera and she said, now, I'm going to talk you through my thinking. And we were like, oh my goodness, yes, please. And she was holding up the shapes and she's saying, now this one looks different, but actually it's the same block. And then she was showing how she was turning and flipping. And she said, but this one I'm really curious about. I mean, that in itself is action research, isn't it? Really looking at empowering those children. And there's some of the work. The other one that the teachers absolutely loved was tangrams. And again, we've got some tangrams on the screen and we were like, well, what can you make? And one of the Year 2 teachers said, actually, what I did is I stepped back and I just thought I'd see how they'd approach it. And she said, I've never done that before. I'm kind of always in there. I'm always teaching. But she said, what I noticed was that the more, what she was tagging, the more able children were actually not more able with spatial reasoning. That caused a little flurry in that session. I can tell you, I did not get those teachers back on task for ages. Amazing. And that was what the research was doing. It was causing us to stop and think and wonder. And another Year 1 teacher said, actually, one of my girls really struggles, flew at the task. So what did we find out? Well, we were looking to see whether spatial reasoning could be an indicator, probably too early to tell. But one of the Year 4 teachers in her presentation at the end was just ecstatic. And she said, actually, I've never before had that proportion of children making the most amount of progress. And we said, what do you think? And she said, oh, categorically, it's what we've been doing with spatial reasoning. Is it? It's very hard, isn't it, to go, well, that made a difference and that made a difference. But do you know what? It empowered her to think about that. We looked at kind of the children that had made kind of, progress in their normal summative data. And then we looked at how they'd made kind of with the spatial reasoning, the post and pre-task, and we were like, oh, there's a bit of a correlation there. That's interesting. Children chose more tasks. So people were starting to influence their pedagogy more. Other things improved as well. Hadn't expected this. One of the teachers said, right, they're all now better at place value. And we said, really? She said, yep, as a result of doing that number line task, she said, I thought they knew number lines. Now I realise they didn't. Things like collaboration and language came out really strong. And of course, tangrams were a hit. Everybody loved them, the parents, the children, all of the adults. And isn't that lovely? We're getting excited about maths because we read a research article, because we read some research, we had a go at doing it in school, and suddenly we've got all this excitement. So what next? Well, one of the teachers said, well, I've modified my curriculum. We've now got a learning trajectory across the whole school. We were like, that's amazing. So what could you do? This is my penultimate slide, in case anybody's worried like that I'm going on. So what could you do? Well, I think my thing would be have a go. I think what I know is that research, it's not a disabler. It actually empowers you. It encourages you to reflect and try things out and have a go and talk to colleagues. And yes, it is a bit bumpy and actually often feels a bit inaccessible or irrelevant, but that's about breaking it down, isn't it? And thinking, do you know what, that little quote or that article or whatever it is, that made me stop and wonder. And so, if you're now excited about doing something on spatial reasoning, hop over to ECMG, there's the website. There's also a Lumen video on spatial reasoning, and there's also the MA journal. I really want to finish by just telling you kind of how it empowered 2 of the people in my group. So I mentioned that there were lots of teaching staff. So I had lots of teachers, but I also had a teaching assistant as well. And I had the great opportunity to edit the primary maths journal. And we thought, what if we made the journal all spatial reasoning? And so loads of people, amazing colleagues who I know are in the room today, contributed to that, and fantastic articles, but I'm not highlighting them. I want to highlight 2 other people. I want to highlight one of the teachers who came and did the project, and then a little bit of persuasion on my part, but she was empowered to write an article and publish. Isn't that amazing? And the teaching assistant did the same as well. And I just want to end there by saying, we can all use research and we can take it into practice. So I hope you're empowered. I hope you're feeling really enthusiastic. There are the references. I'm going to stop talking. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alison. That was great. So I find that fascinating as a researcher myself to see the different ways that research can be used, and in particularly these kind of unexpected impacts of using research. That's great. Thank you. So any comments or questions that you have for Alison, please add them into the chat, or if that's inspired you to think about how you might use research, or perhaps even if you've got some examples of research that you've found very influential and you could share these with other people in the session here today. So thank you. And right, now we'll move on to our final speaker. And our final speaker today is Elaine Bennett. And Elaine is a very experienced early years and Key Stage 1 practitioner. And she's currently teaching in and leading foundation stage in a primary school in Essex. And Elaine founded the Keeping Early Years Unique movement that you might have heard of. And the aim of this movement is to promote playful and developmentally appropriate early years provision. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what Elaine has to say. So over to you, Elaine.
Oh, thank you. And I hope you can hear me. I'm going,
oh,
hooray. I'm going to go across to my slides, so hold tight, everybody. Right, here we go. Okay, they can be bigger than that, I promise. Right, I'm hoping you can see that. Brilliant. I'm gonna, I never know if these meeting panels kind of black a part of the screen out. Is the screen all okay for you? Yeah, right, okay.
It looks fine.
Right, great. So I'm just going to minimize all of our faces. Right, so my session with you today. So yes, I'm a practicing reception teacher, fresh from the classroom today. Very, very busy times for all of us. And it's thinking about, okay, so what's happening in the early years classroom? And I have put some taglines in there, you know, more than rote, more than recall, more than numbers. And I think this message has never mattered more actually than it does today. And I'm going to be speaking to you a little bit about some of the things that we do, but also hopefully giving you some places that you can turn to look at as well. And I think one of the it is really about being empowered. And I used to talk quite a lot about putting your maths glasses on. And I think that you need to be empowered, you need to be aware of the evidence and the research, so that when you see something happening, like this picture here, you can see out in the garden, you can see the maths here, you can see what's happening, you can see what it is you need to say to scaffold and extend and make connections to those big ideas. And we are in the moment setting. So although in reception, we have a little math session every day, a lot of our maths is promoted through play and teachable moments. And I really want us to hold on to how important those moments are alongside perhaps those larger group sessions that you might do. But with 10 minutes to go, I better get cracking. Here we go. So she says, she can't have the slide. So, okay, why does it matter? Why does it matter that we know about evidence and research? Well, of course it matters so that we can give our children the very, very best start. But it also matters so that we are empowered. And as a reception teacher now working in England, thankfully in a really supportive school with a really supportive and understanding SLT, not everyone's in that position. And we do have to be empowered, especially, I'm going to keep saying reception, but I think that's where the push is really coming at the moment in terms of early years. So actually, why have we got to be informed? Well, because things get thrown at us like this. Now, this is an example taken from Ofsted's Bold Beginnings report, where they were highlighting effective and outstanding and good practice in schools. And, you know, you're all here as maths experts. And if you look at this example, which talks about children understanding the system of 3-digit numbers as rolling dice, and then representing them on base 10, and understanding apparently that 0 is a placeholder. If you understand research, and if you understand evidence, and if you understand how young children learn maths, you will know that actually that's not appropriate for reception children, for the vast majority of them. So, you know, if you're in a school and this is being put in front of you, as it was indeed this report, as a reception teacher, you need to say, well, actually, no, that's not an example of what's appropriate for reception children. Also, with the current early learning goals, you know, elements of these are really good. You know, numbers to 10, fantastic. Supertising, fantastic. Other elements are not so great. And despite the frequent requests of people like myself and some of my highly esteemed colleagues here who keep asking, where is the evidence for this recall of facts without any manipulatives or, you know, any props or rhymes? We were told that these goals are based on the latest child development research and evidence. Well, actually, they're not. Because no matter how much we ask, and we ask and we ask and we ask, we don't get the evidence, and that's because there isn't any. So these goals, you know, and many of you like me in reception, we're going to be assessing against these very soon. You shouldn't be worrying about them now until you really have to look at them at the end of the year. Parts of them are great. Parts of them are not so great, which is why it's so important that we understand the evidence, we understand the research, and we understand what our children really, really need. So because, you know, if we think about the educational programme now for the EYFS, we have got some of these words, you know, maths mastery, excelling, manipulative, strong grounding. If you don't understand early years maths, those words could be really very poorly and developmentally inappropriately and pedagogically irresponsibly interpreted. And that is what's happening for some children. And likewise, in the early learning goal, we have to know, well, what is composition? What's the evidence? What's the research? What is it that matters for children? What supertising is so important, but we have to know about supertising. We have to know, well, how can we make number bonds appropriate for small children? Odds and evens, all of this kind of language that's coming out. Actually, how can we view that through an early years lens? And if we're not informed, then we can't. And we have to come back to how important these overarching principles are. We mustn't forget that the EYFS is about the unique child. It is about relationships and interaction, and it is about the enabling environment. Those things together are what support and what enable and what allow learning and development to thrive. So, and we have to remember that, you know, when we think about the EYFS, okay, I'm sure most of you here this evening are reception or perhaps nursery if you're EYFS, but we are talking about birth to 5, which is why we have to start demystifying and understanding actually some of this language and what it means, and keep picking it up and putting it back through that early years lens. So the good news is there is so much out there to support you and to inform your practice. There is so much out there that's principled, it's informed, it's evidence-based, and it's developmentally appropriate, and best of all, it's free. We have to hold on. We have to keep asking why. We have to keep asking when demands are put on us as early as teachers. We have to say, well, where's the evidence? Where's the research? If it's evidence from secondary children or upper key stage 2, then actually that's not appropriate. What about child development? What about children? So here are some really, really great resources for you. And I would urge you all, if I was going to give you homework, here's your homework. Go and check out these amazing websites. Ericsson over in America, phenomenal website. Dream, the amazing learning trajectories. Check out all of these websites. And of course, we've already heard it mentioned, I think, so many times this evening, the amazing, of course, I'm slightly biased as I'm part of this group, the Early Childhood Maths group, and the amazing work they're doing on, you know, birth, and not just early, you know, not just the typical English early years, but that birth to 7 early years. And of course, all of this I'm sharing here with you and more was drawn upon by, again, some colleagues within today's meeting to draw up the phenomenal piece of work that's Birth to 5 Matters. I am so proud to be part of Birth to 5 Matters. If you haven't checked it out yet, I urge you to. It's an amazing website, an amazing document, and actually while supporting your practice and while supporting, you know, your environment and your interactions, we are helping you develop your subject knowledge, and everything that's in Birth to 5 Matters is based on evidence and research. There's nothing in there that's pulled out of thin air. So if you want to be doing the right sort of things for your children, I would urge you to check out Birth to 5 Matters and all of these other fantastic, free, don't be signing up, spending your money on expensive, you know, websites, because this stuff is free and it's there and it's written by real early years experts. So back into my classroom for the last 3 minutes, you know, make connections. It matters about making connections and helping children to make those connections through their play. So yes, we love the 00 superhero song. Yes, we love number blocks. And then in play, look what happens. Off she goes, this little girl, and she makes her number staircase. And we talk about number staircases all the time in my class. It's part of our everyday language. And then outside and inside, you know, children making their mark. This blew me away here with this Numicon, and then we started trying to sum up some little sums here. Here's a child replicating some tallying we're doing, and already in reception, without me doing very formal adult-led guided sessions with small groups every day, they're understanding, oh, there's 7, look, 5 and 2, 7. And also, even when they go into the creative area, the maths is still coming out because they're making these arrangements of numbers. And lots and lots and lots of fun and games, inside and out, track games, dice games, games on the whiteboard, domino games. Okay, they've got to learn about doubles. Well, let's do it through dominoes. Let's do it through dice. Let's do it through fingers. Let's make it appropriate. Let's make connections to these really big ideas. One of my favourite games on the Learning Trajectories website is Get the Turtle Home. Straight away there, as you play that game, big ideas here. You've got supertising, you've got cardinality, you've got one-to-one correspondence. You know, you've got tens frames on there, so you've got the manipulatives element. You've got the linking the number to the amount. As I say, and this is from the Learning Trajectories website, everything I'm sharing with you is based on evidence. And then, of course, we've already heard it mentioned once, the fantastic, well, not more, actually, a lot more than once, the amazing spatial reasoning toolkit. Do you know, when I came to this school I'm at now, I was about to throw these waffle bricks out. I thought, oh, they're plastic, you know, everyone gets obsessed. Oh, we don't want plastic. Do you know what? They're amazing. The spatial reasoning, the spatial thinking required to connect them together is quite a joy to behold. Flipping, turning, rotating. So check out this toolkit and check out these amazing posters here. Again, written by experts based on the evidence and going from birth to 7. And I'm going to say it again, all completely free. And here, obviously, you already heard it today, the amazing toolkit. So you are already doing great stuff. There's already amazing stuff happening in your settings. So don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. No, you're doing great stuff. Keep on singing, dancing, moving, creating, building, playing games, observing, noticing, listening, talking, and get informed. And those websites I showed you, they are, I would say, some of the very best places. Now, the places that inform me, I would highly recommend them. And keep going back through that early years lens. Keep thinking about child development. Child development has never mattered more than it does in a pandemic world. So check out those websites and just hold on to what Montessori says. And you know what? I think you can't go far wrong with going back to a bit of Montessori. Let me just hide these so I can see it. And Montessori very clearly said, we must not confuse the trunk of the tree with the branches, and we will not expect good branches to grow on a dead tree. Many people reduce maths to certain feats of memory. And if we simply make a child learn that 3 and 3 is 6, or 2 times 4 makes 8, we are constructing a tree with branches attached. And in doing so, we have only created an illusion. It's not a tree, it's only a cross. It will bear no fruit, it will give no life or joy, just suffering. For a lot of us, maybe here tonight, we got switched off maths in secondary because of this kind of learning by rote. We cannot have children being switched off at the age of 4. So we need to keep building those ideas. So Montessori says, instead, we plant that seed carefully. We watch those little plant take fruit. We watch it sprout leaves, and we watch it grow those strong branches with pleasure. That is what we want for our children. We want children who love maths, who see maths, who feel maths in their bones. So it's so much more than rote, it's so much more than recall, and it's so much more than number. And if you'd like to get in touch, you know, please, I'm on Twitter. We've got the big Facebook group. I'm dabbling in Instagram. We've got the website. Just get in touch. And I think that's me at the end. And I really hope you found the session useful. But you can all do this. Just get out there, look at what's around, check out, you know, the things that we're sharing with you tonight, and get yourself informed, and you can't go far wrong. Thank you very, very much.
That's great, Elaine. Thank you so much. That was really thought-provoking and inspiring. I hope everyone's taken lots of really great ideas away from that. So that brings us to the end of our session today. So I just want to thank everyone. There's a big team behind putting these sessions together. And especially I wanted to mention Jenny Back and Sarah Howlett, who've done a lot of all the behind the scenes work. So we do have a third event coming up, you can see on the slide here now. And so this session will be thinking about the next steps, both for you in practice and also for all of us to promote these ideas. So do look out for that, and please carry on using the hashtag #MathsIsMore if you want to carry on discussing this and talking about these ideas on social media. So you can find the links to the earlier session on YouTube, and the link for that is in the chat, and look out for a link so if you want to go back and watch today's presentations again. So it's just time to thank once again our speakers, to Clare, Alison and to Elaine for such fantastic presentations and really interesting ideas. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.